Welcome to Garden Wise Adventures. My name is Malie, and it's a beautiful evening in early May. It's the very first week of May, first part of the first week of May, and it is absolutely gorgeous finally. Now we've had a really cool late spring, and I have pruned my grapes far later than I've ever pruned them before. I pruned them 2 days ago, and I did video some of the process, but I wanted to kind of show you what I did. I'm going to show you some before pictures, a video of while I was pruning it, and then show you what it looks like afterwards so that you can kind of see what I've done, and we'll go over a little bit about why I pruned them that way and what will happen since I've pruned them this late. Normally I prune my grapes near the end of March or the beginning of April, but this year the weather was not cooperating during that time frame, and my grapes also didn't bud out until about a week ago. So let me show you what they look like right now, and then we'll show you what they look like afterwards. So we're losing light. We've got to do this pretty quickly. It's been a really busy year, and I haven't been able to get out into my garden until late in the evenings. But you can kind of see I have grapes weeping. Now my grapes end up weeping whether I prune them the end of March or the beginning of April or even this late. Weeping is a natural part of what they do. It's just that the sap has started flowing, and they'll stop in a little while. It usually takes them about 5 days after I prune them to stop weeping. You can kind of see where the little buds are. We've got little buds on them. So this is my hemorrhoid grape. I prune my grapes using the forearm knife system, and we showed you a little bit of how I choose the spurs to prune. This right here is a large old spur. There's going to come a time when I'm going to need to replace this cane. So this is a cane right here. We've got spurs. We've got the old spurs that are big, and then we've got the newer spurs coming off of those. And I try to prune my grapes down so that there are two little buds left on each spur. And I try to have my spurs spaced out about this far apart. Some of them end up a little bit further, some of them are a little bit closer. I'm not exact. These are not production grapes, these are grapes just for me to enjoy. And then we have spurs like this one that are pretty much dead that I'm going to need to remove. Now this year I did not have a lot of time to do my pruning, so I did not go through and remove everything that I should have removed. Here's another dead spur. You can kind of see that it's old. We've got, it's a little bit hollow. So there's gonna come a time when I need to replace this cane. Now to replace the canes, I leave areas like this. We've got one healthy spur right here that will grow a healthy cane off of it. If it grows one that's good enough, I will use it to replace this cane right here. Now this cane is probably about 4 or 5 years old, and that's about the length of time it takes for me to replace them. The lower canes need to be replaced a little more often because they get shaded by the top canes. Here's my oldest cane. I don't think I've replaced this one yet, and it's still going, and it's been about 15 years. So this has been a very, very healthy tree. This is the newest one that I've replaced. You can kind of see down here that we don't have the heavy old spurs with the newer spurs coming off of it yet. We just have the new spurs that I pruned. So this is the newest one. We've got a lot of sap dripping going on right there. This is my youngest vine. This is a Concord, and I did miss a couple of canes. I need to come back and catch them. I missed this one. It's budding out already, and look how gorgeous they are. I absolutely love the look of the new leaves. And the flowers for the grapes are going to come right out of here. Absolutely gorgeous. So this one, I was finally able to get decent canes on it. The panels that I have are 10 feet apart. So I try to have 10 feet on one side and 10 feet on the other, and I do not let them go outside of those bounds. I'll come in and summer prune these to keep them in bounds. I will keep them out of my garden beds by summer pruning, and then I'll just shove them back in. You know, when they start creeping out behind the fence panels, I'll just shove them back in. And if it gets too crowded, I'll thin it out a little bit. My grapes really produce really heavily, so I'm not worried about summer pruning them. Now the way I built my trellis is, these are the heavy-duty T-posts. I've cemented in every other post. So the post that is in the center is not cemented in. I just didn't have the time, the energy to cement in every single one of them. But this one is not cemented in because it's not bearing weight. The ones on the sides are the T-posts that are cemented in. And this wire is just a thin gauged wire I got at Home Depot, and I have not replaced it yet, and it's been 15 years since I put these in. So the wires seem to last a long time. The only time I have problems is when I go through pruning and accidentally cut the wires. And that hasn't happened very often, luckily. So this is what my Concord grape looks like. And actually, let's go over this really quickly. When you're pruning grapes, it takes about 3 years to form the shape that you want. And you can prune your grapes in any shape that you want. I like to use the forearm knife because I feel it's very productive for me. So the first year, what I do is, after I plant the grapes, I just let a ton of vines grow. I choose the tallest one that's the strongest vine, and then I tie it to the T-post. And I cut everything off so it's just one long stick. The next year, I only allow that vine to grow. And I let the side shoots grow as much as possible. And then I choose the longest, strongest ones that are spaced appropriately. And I use those as my canes or my arms. Another name for the canes is arms. And then I cut everything else off. And then every year, the only things that I allow to grow are off of those arms. Anything that comes in between on the trunk gets pruned off. And sometimes I'll prune those off in the summer if they're getting too vigorous. But we just have a nice clean area between the two arms on the top, the two arms on the bottom, and I don't let anything grow out the base. And then every year after that, we prune our spurs down to 2 buds. So everything else comes off. It's pretty drastic pruning, but it keeps your grapevines in check and it keeps them producing a lot. This vine produces heavier than any of my other vines. This is my Swenson Red. It's a seeded grape. It tastes really good. It's getting to the point where I am going to probably need to replace some of these arms. Look how old this is. Matter of fact, I was hurrying and I did not prune off all of the spurs that I should have. I should probably take off this spur right here, this spur and this spur, take off this old dead one right there, so that we only have those 2 spurs left. Take off this and this one. Yeah, I need to come back in and finish this. I didn't do a good enough job. What happens if you have too many spurs is it just overcrowds and doesn't produce as well. And I think it probably also saps the energy out of the plants. So I need to come back and thin this one out a little bit. But we've got spurs all over the place, especially this area over here. This is a little bit ridiculous. We need to thin that out. This is my favorite for taste, but least vigorous vine. This is a Cannabis grape, and this is the one where it took me the longest to replace the canes because I couldn't get any vines to grow strong enough. But I finally got some strong growth out of the vines and was able to replace the canes, and I replaced them 2 years ago. So you can kind of see what 2 years of growth on spurs look like. It's getting a little dark, sorry. So if you look at this, we've got an older spur right here. This is probably 2 years old. And then I let these grow. So these are my new spurs, and we will keep these as the spurs from now on. And that's where the growth will come from that form the grapes. Here's another one that I probably should thin out. We've got a dead one right there that I need to prune off. And then instead of having 3 spurs, I should only have 2. Yes, I was definitely in a hurry when I was doing this. We've got a 2nd year growth on the spurs there. So this is what it looks like in the 2nd year after you replace the canes and you have spurs growing. And then I think this part right here is dead. I think we need to replace the end here. You can kind of see how it's gray. It's kind of hard to see because of the light. It's getting really dark. But then when you get to this point, we finally have the spurs and the wood is lighter and healthier looking. So it looks like the end of this died. This is a Jupiter. It's more of a muscadine grape. It has kind of a musky flavor. And these canes were replaced about 4 years ago, so the spurs are pretty mature. But I love the color of the leaves on these. It seems like the leaf color almost reflects the color of the grapes. This is a really dark red grape. Very tasty. It's got a little bend in it, but that's okay. It still produces really well. We've got some dripping going on. Look how pretty that is. These buds are out quite a bit further than they were 2 days ago. They've really started to catch up on their growth. So you can prune your grapes pretty much any time, but if you're going to prune them hard, do them when the buds are about this size. And this is the size they were when I started pruning. And that's how much they've come out since, in the last couple of days. So we've really got a lot of new growth on this. So that's a quick primer on how to prune grapes, and I hope that was helpful to you. Growing grapes is a lot of fun, and I'll link a few videos up here on how I use my grapes. So I'll see you in the next video, and I hope you go have a wonderful garden adventure.